they're getting the operation together. Again, this is an operation that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here on the Don Lemon Show. There are for this reason it may look like MAGA coded, but there's a reason they have so many white people here. I'm just going to be honest. It's because of the operation that they're doing today. It's important to have allies, as they said, white allies here. So that is what I could say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information.
Okay, did you catch that? He said we're turning the cameras off so we don't record some critical information. So he's saying he knows what they're about to do and he don't want to incriminate them. So he's turning the cameras off. What's fascinating about this is that all you guys see is when Don goes into the church and he's talking to the pastor and he's acting like he's a reporter. Unbeknownst to everybody else, he was orchestrating the whole thing with them. As in, he's ready, he knows what they're about to do, and he's about to get in the trenches with them. You know, when you need content, you know, you'll go through some extremes, but hey, let's watch the whole video and see what else he this whole thing in its entirety. You're on the Unpopular Opinion Show with the Cajun conservative, Johnny Caruso. Welcome to the show.
What if I told you that a former disgraced CNN anchor just committed what many legal experts are calling a federal crime, live on camera, actually filming himself doing it, thinking that he was protected by the First Amendment? Well, that's exactly what happened. And the Justice Department just put him on notice that impending charges could land him in federal prison for years. I'm sure many of you, like me, were sickened by what we saw this past Sunday. A mob of anti-ICE agitators stormed City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota during their worship service. They barged into the sanctuary, blowing whistles, chanting "ICE out," and terrifying families, including children, who were simply there trying to pray and worship. Now, of course, that was bad enough. But right there in the middle of it all was none other than the now unemployed Don Lemon, live streaming the entire disruption, who had the unmitigated gall to confront the pastor and defend the protesters.
What do you think of this?
Y'all remember at the beginning when Don says this is a secret location, nobody knows it? Well, fool, how did you get the location? Who told you about it? I mean, you can't make this up. Let's get back to the video.
This is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution and the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yes, it's a constitutional right, freedom of speech, freedom of protest. Now we're seeing people come out in front of traffic, blocking traffic, no permits. Now they're running up in churches. What do we know about our freedom of speech to protest? You have the freedom to peacefully is the first key word. Assembly is the second key word. You do not have the right to block public transit. You can be on the sidewalk peacefully, not disorderly, not hitting, spitting, yelling, invading people's space, which is an assault. If you didn't know, you don't actually have to hit somebody to be an assault. You can invade their space, them to tell you, hey, please, get out of my space. You're being disorderly. If they stay there too long, that is an assault, okay? So you have the right to peacefully assemble. There's nothing that these people have done throughout any of these protests that have been peaceful. And also, a church is not considered public property, it's considered private property. And you cannot impede those who want to peacefully worship. Meaning you can't go in there being disruptive. But Don Lemonhead knows the law, and he's gonna go and tell the preacher that, hey, look, I got more rights to you because, you know, I used to be a reporter. Now I'm a Mr. Podcast, and I'm a podcast guy. But as being a podcast, I know my rights. I can come in your church, sir, and disrupt your church because I'm a podcast reporter now, son. Look, you can't make this up. Look, let's get back to the video.
If we think in terms of counterfactuals, can you imagine Don Lemon doing anything like that at a mosque?
Well, we know what would happen if he were to go into a mosque. He would get his shit handed to him real quick. He don't have the balls to do that. You know, he goes to where the most peaceful white people are. And, I mean, right now he's content chasing. And look, I hope it lands him some time. I hope it lands until higher up people in this establishment, they call the Democrat left-wing ideology, from politicians to people like Don Lemonhead, until their actions get jail time. People, the liberal white women, they're gonna keep going apeshit crazy. So until their peers and their the people they look up to start getting jail time, they're gonna keep up the foolishness and the shenanigans. So I mean, no, Don, he ain't about to go into no mosque. Are you kidding me?
Can you imagine him walking into a Minneapolis mosque, going up to the imam and telling him that the protesters disrupting Muslim worship were justified under the First Amendment? Regardless, what this pastor did not know at the time is that Don Lemon was in on all of this. Before the church invasion, he was caught on camera describing this as a secret operation called Operation Pull-Up.
They're getting the operation together. Again, this is an operation that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold.
If it's so secret, then how your Lemonhead ass knows where is it at? You know where it's at, but it's secret. It's top secret, but you're right there, and you don't want to disclose the location. Man, you can't make this up.
Here on the Don Lemon Show, there are for this reason it may look like MAGA coded, but there's a reason they have so many white people here. I'm just going to be honest. It's because of the operation that they're doing today. It's important to have allies, as they said, white allies here. So that is what I could say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information here.
Now, besides Lemon's embarrassingly absurd racist obsession with whiteness, what you just saw there was nothing less than a man chronicling the evidence for his own prosecution. He admitted on camera that he knew a disruption was coming. He knew where they were going, and he deliberately embedded himself in that mob. And within hours, the Justice Department dropped this.
Don Lemon used the word we. Not protesters, not they, not them, or any of their preferred pronouns. He said we. Does that put him on the line as a protester and lose his First Amendment media coverage?
I was this position of his is so stupid. I was trying to figure out how to put it in layman's terms. Imagine you have a bank robbery that's being planned by a number of criminals. They're crossing state lines. They're using the wires. And then a a podcaster says, well, let me embed myself in here and come along for the ride and live stream the crime, that would not be protected by the First Amendment. And so it is a crime to disrupt and harass and make people in a church or any house of worship feel unsafe in this country. And when you're part of that planning and show up and ride along and laugh outside about and make commentary outside about how disrupting and putting people in fear is literally part of protest and part of the plan, we are not reaching conclusions now. Of course, everybody is entitled to the presumption of innocence. But if I were giving advice to a journalist about this, which I have done in the past, I would say do not participate in a crime actively.
And
This has got to be one of the most stupidest things I've ever seen an ex-journalist do. I've seen a lot of current journalists just talk out their mouths. But they're on the prelude and premise and protections of the networks. Be as vulgar as you can be. The more content, the better. But this guy is not under, Don Lemonhead is not under the protections of CNN. Swim at your own risk, buddy. You got to choose a lane. You're either a journalist or a podcaster. You can't say you're a podcaster and you're in the Jeep with the guns and say, look, when y'all hop out and commit this armed robbery, I'll be ready to shoot my camera. But y'all just do y'all thing, But I'm gonna interview the people y'all are robbing and ask, what does it feel like to be robbed, knowing that you're rich and you're white privileged? Tell us how it feels. I mean, you can't make this up. You cannot make this up. This dude is a complete idiot. Complete.
here's where this escalates dramatically. Harmeet Dillon, who you just saw there, revealed that Lemon is looking at facing charges under 2 acts: the FACE Act and, ironically, the Ku Klux Klan Act. So if you don't know, the FACE Act stands for the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. It's a 1994 federal law that prohibits using force, threats, or physical obstruction to interfere with individuals seeking to obtain or provide reproductive health services or damage facilities providing such services and the like. But the law has been successfully expanded in interpretation and enforcement to cover interference with access to other facilities and other services protected under federal law, including places of worship. So Lemon and the protesters are facing charges with that, and ironically, he's facing charges under the Ku Klux Klan Act. That's an 1871 law that makes it a federal crime to conspire to violate someone's civil rights, including their First Amendment right to worship freely. The penalties are pretty severe. For FACE Act violations involving force or intimidation, we're talking up to 3 years in federal prison. If bodily injury resulted, that jumps to 10 years. And if they tack on KKK Act conspiracy charges, which the Biden DOJ, by the way, routinely did to pro-life grandmothers praying outside abortion clinics, Lemon could be looking at some serious prison time. And so, needless to say, Don Lemon is freaking out. And he decided to post a rather panicked video response to all of this.
MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this assistant attorney general, I don't know, what's her name? It's something Hammett, Gillen or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there.
I'm not going to act like I know all the acts and all the laws pertaining to these matters. But I know you can't do that shit. You can't just run up in the church and stop what they have going on and freely protest in these people's church. Which, you know, the nuts and bolts of who they were looking for. Yeah. An ICE agent, happens to be Christian, oh my God, and goes to church. These people on the left, they think their labels is God sent. You hear what they talk about a crowd of white people gathering. Well, these MAGAs, automatically, what is it? More than 2 white people? That's MAGA? That's a group of MAGA? No matter who or what the situation is? And he was talking about the own people in his group. You know, ICE agent. They're bad, so they apparently they can't go to church. I mean, they put these labels on, and then they think it gives them the right to just go and have their way and their say with people. No, but it don't work that way. See, these people can't live within the confines of the law, so they got to go reinvent the law. Don Lemon don't know if he wants to be. I have to call you back, baby. If he wants to be a podcaster, a prankster, or a reporter. But dude, you can't be all 3. Let's get back to the video.
Chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protests at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Now, you'll notice immediately that Lemon is changing his tune there, right? You heard what he said before in that parking lot. Before they entered the church, right? He knew exactly where they were going. He claimed to know what they were doing and what it was all about, but he couldn't tell us now. We would find out in due course. Now he's saying he had no idea what they were going to do. He had no idea where they were going. And when he found out that it was interrupting a church service, he decided, as a member of the press, as a journalist, to chronicle the protests once they got there. But the internet never forgets. And now his own words that we heard earlier are destroying that defense. But if you could believe it, it gets even worse. He just couldn't stop digging.
Yeah, from the start to the end of this whole thing with Don Lemon, he catches himself in so many lies. That's going to be his problem. Why he might do some jail time, because he initially, on the last clip, he goes into the church posing as a journalist, but he forgot at the beginning that he was calling the huddle and getting all these protesters together and not disclosing his location. Secret location, he says, but he has access. Later he says he just saw them, and he started walking with them. So he's creating content, but then he's like, I'm a play journalist over here. Really, you're playing prank. You're pranking like you're a journalist now, and it's funny, man. It's funny. I don't think something might happen to him. I just think the politicians are off limits. I like to see some of them go to jail, but they seem to be off limits. But his coconut ass, he might have to get lathered up and do 5 years. He might be happy to get in there. Might be his plan. It might be his plan all along. Goddamn. Let's get back to the video.
So there is a certain degree of racism there, and there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah, I absolutely 100%, but it's an intimidation tactic. And, I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there.
And I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America.
The gift that just keeps on giving. I mean, he's the biggest face in journalism, he says. He's not even in journalism no more. He's the biggest podcaster out there. They had him because he's a black gay man. Son, the United States. I'm gonna give you a history lesson here. We did not leave Great Britain to escape freedom of religion. They already had that freedom of religion thing, you know. They're the West. They had the whole freedom of religion thing. We didn't escape them. We decided to they brought us over here first of all, okay? And then we decided not to call back. Freedom of taxation. They wanted to tax the shit out of us for, the Boston Tea Party, whatever it was. And so that's why we broke away with them. They wanted us to pay taxes. And we were like, hey, we're way over here. We're running this over here. You guys aren't contributing to any of the kind of government situation here, yet you want to tax us. So that's why we broke away from Great Britain. It wasn't from freedom of religion. They already had that. I mean, but the #1 podcast show, Don Lemonhead, he's gonna school everybody.
And you have a platform and you're the biggest name. Of course, you're going to be the person that they single out and they're going to make the headline because it plays to their base. And their base is full of racist, bigoted homophobes like Nicki Minaj, by the way.
My heavens. What an embarrassingly shameless narcissist. And Nicki Minaj, the pop star, she came out against him and what he did. She excoriated him and ironically clapped back at her while talking about white supremacy. But again, narcissism has a definite way of clouding judgment, as we can see. What you just heard there is a perfect example of how Don Lemon is literally digging his own grave. As my namesake, the law professor Jonathan Turley pointed out, what you just witnessed there was Don Lemon actually perfecting the prosecution's case against him. And it's devastating. The statement you just heard there could easily be used by federal prosecutors as Exhibit A in their file right now. You just heard Don Lemon say explicitly that these worshipers were targeted for their faith. They were targeted for the kind of faith they practice. He openly stated that they were targeted precisely because of their religious values. I mean, he's saying it on tape. This is exactly what prosecutors need to charge Lemon under the FACE Act. The FACE Act, remember, prohibits the use or threat of force and physical obstruction that injures, intimidates, or interferes with a person seeking to exercise their First Amendment rights of religious freedom at places of religious worship. That's something that's actually very hard to prove, that somebody intended to obstruct the free exercise of religious worship, unless, of course, you have a borderline illiterate narcissist who openly admits it on tape. Lemon explicitly attacked the congregation's theology. They were targeted precisely because of the very religion they were practicing. And he's essentially confessing that the disruption was specifically about the congregation's religious beliefs and values. And Lemon, thinking he was defending the protesters' right to demonstrate, actually provided the smoking gun evidence that the entire operation was designed to suppress religious worship. That's not civil disobedience. That's not journalism. That's a federal crime under two separate statutes, FACE Act and Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which makes it illegal to conspire to deny anyone their constitutional rights, including the right to worship freely.
Well, that's going to conclude our video. Hope y'all liked the video. As y'all see, Mr. Don Lemonhead, he got some explaining to do. Yes, I am the Unpopular Opinion Show. I'm Johnny Caruso. Thank y'all for tuning in. If y'all like the show, go ahead and give me a like, a subscribe, all that good lovey stuff. Thank you for the love. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, peace.